Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone, to the Diversity and Humanity Virtual Summit. I have been your host for the last 2 days. I am Kayleigh O'Keefe, and I'm the founder of Soul Excellence Publishing. And I want to thank you, first of all, for being with us on this journey. And I want to thank the co-authors in the book, The Diversity and Humanity. I see you joining here. Hi, Karen. Hi, Reggie. Welcome. And I really want to kick this off by sharing, as you've probably experienced over the last 2 days, I'm really not just a publisher. And I view my role in these collaborations as not someone on the side just putting out a book, but rather as someone who is intimately involved in the process. And as I was reflecting on that, I realized that growing up, I've always played goalkeeper on soccer teams. Like, that is my position. That's what I've played up until like 3 years ago. I've actively played my entire life, travel teams, club in college, all the adult leagues. And what I love so much about goalkeeper is it's a team sport, and yet it's a very unique position. It's a unique position where you go off and train, where you come into the game and you're communicating and aligning and keeping everyone organized. And you're also sort of that security net at the back of the field, like ready to defend, ready for anything that's coming your way. And I think this part of me being a goalkeeper is just inherent in who I am. And so as I've built Soul Excellence Publishing, the way that I've created it is by putting out topics, putting out titles, putting out ideas like this one of really exploring diversity and humanity, which started as just like, maybe let's offer up a new perspective on DEI, on things that are happening in the workplace. Like, I put out things that are near and dear to my heart. And then I participate with the group as a writer, as a leader. And we really are in these different roles throughout the experience, as follower, as leader, and really, as I come to think of it, as goalkeeper. And so I wanted to share that with you, especially for those of you who don't know me or who are just coming into this experience and getting to know our authors, that this is really a unique community that we've created and that we've built over the last 3 years of publishers and now published authors across so many books and so many countries. So I want to thank you for being part of this journey with us, and thank you specifically for participating in the Diversity and Humanity Summit. And it just felt like I needed to wrap up and round out our conversation by sharing with you the 3 things that I've come to believe are essential for championing humanity. And I'll share those with you now. We're going to go into them, but it's noticing the trap of duality, engaging in community, and connecting back to heart. So noticing the trap of duality, engaging in community, and coming back to heart. And I'd love to express this concept with you, this idea with you, through a series of short vignettes that I talk about in my chapter, and invite you along the journey with me. And of course, invite you to purchase your copy, to read the book. I know Reggie's already read it 3 times. He's a co-author in it. Thank you, Reggie. I see your comment there. And so I want to share with you 3 vignettes that really speak to this idea of why it's so important for us to champion humanity, especially at a time where we're seeing almost a real disdain for humanity. I would say Claudia puts it best in her chapter in the book, where humanity's like, we're having an autoimmune disease at this moment, where we're warring internally, we're warring against ourselves. And it's going to take individuals like you and me to really stand for a higher vision, but it's actually a deeper vision, grounded in the full spectrum of the human experience. So I want to kick things off like I do in my chapter, taking you all the way back to my childhood. And one of the fun things about this collaborative process is we get to really co-create and feel. And like a week ago, I said to the authors, like, I was inspired by a picture I saw of myself as a child. I invited all the authors to share one. And so we all posted on Slack pictures of us as a child. And I didn't share this one, but this is my favorite one of Kayleigh. You can tell she loves the arts, with the homemade sweatshirt I made with my grandma, a little mischievous with the troll in my pocket, a colorful scrunchie. And I'm in my favorite place, Wells, Maine, where my grandmother had a house and where I got to spend summers with her. And as a child, I was super obsessed with world atlases and with world culture. You could find myself like at this young of an age, just poring over an atlas from my grandmother, studying all the different foods and religions and languages all across the world. And I would just find myself there for hours. And I loved imagining, like, what do other first graders, what do other second graders around the world like to do? You know, in the book, I share, like, do they also like Mariah Carey? Do they also just like not want to hang out with their little brothers? Like, I could just feel this like yearning to connect with people that I didn't yet know, who maybe's culture I did not yet understand, but it was just how I came. And then I had the opportunity to start collecting coins. My dad traveled a lot for work back in the day and would come home with leftover money that seemed like it was worth so much, thousands in Indian rupees and lots of Italian lira before the euro came to be, Norwegian krona, won, pesos, everything. And so I kept a shoebox with all of the currency. And what I loved is I would just like look at the different faces on the coins and on the bills and the different colors and the different insignia. It's like a younger version of myself just instinctively and intuitively saw that all people everywhere, they have their heroes, they have their heroines, they have their mantras, their slogans, their reasons for being, and it's all right there on the currency. Like the story of the nation is there on the currency. And so from an early age, this curiosity, this interest in culture was just part of who I was. And I knew as I started to grow up, like I had a grand vision of living in Washington, D.C. and working for the State Department and traveling the world. And while that specific journey didn't happen, I did go on to live in Spain, to live with families in Bolivia and Argentina and Nicaragua, to travel around the world for my job and just stay super open to, you know, all of the funny things that happen when you travel and the mistakes that you make and the generosity you have to rely on from other people. And each one of those experiences has reminded me time and time and time and time again of how interconnected we are and how all of the things that we look at separate us when it comes down to it. Like we're all sitting around a table eating wherever you go. We're all sitting around and people are talking about the news and politics going on in their country. We're all sitting around and just connecting at the end of the day. And every single one of those experiences has inspired me. And, you know, you can only look back on your life, right, and start connecting the dots. But I feel like that's been completely infused into what I've been able to create here at Soul Excellence, of bringing people together from different backgrounds on different topics from all over the world. We've worked with people in 15 countries. And so I'm grateful for that innate gift and that innate curiosity and what it's allowed me to co-create with leaders in the world through all of our multi-author books. So you've got little Kayleigh, who just was super curious and loved reading and loved learning and loved being exposed to new things and new people. And I'm super grateful my family moved to South Florida from New England when I was 9. That opened my eyes up in a whole new way. It sparked my interest in learning Spanish, which, as you heard, inspired my journey around the world. And so I share that as a vignette of just inviting you to look back to in your own childhood and noticing the things that just innately attracted you, and to really honor and celebrate that aspect of yourself. As you've heard from the authors throughout this summit, so many of us have tapped back into that childlike wonder, that excitement of publishing a book, of opening it, feeling like it's Christmas morning, and also some of the childlike, you know, worry and fear that we you know, as we start to, when we're young children, but start to go into adolescence and we start to have those worries of what will people think. Like we felt all of that. And I think it's such a powerful reminder if we just have a little compassion for this version of ourselves. I go on to share in my chapter that I am a huge fan of a dance studio here called Funk and Flow. Now, I've grown up an athlete primarily, as you heard, a soccer player, pretty competitive, softball, volleyball. Like I love team sports. And yet I've always had this desire to be a dancer. It's like this latent inner thing, but all of the judgments growing up, it's like, well, you're like, not that cute or flexible. You're too sporty, all of that. And I'm so grateful over the last 2 years here in South Florida. One day I was just driving by and I came across a studio called Funk and Flow, the feel good movement space. And I was instantly attracted to it because it talked about yoga and dance. And I was like, yes, I want to do these things. Please, like, let me in. And for the last almost 2 years, I've been going, it's pretty much religiously 3 or 4 times a week. It's my friend group here in South Florida. And so I've been going there for over a year and a half when we were in the midst of writing this book. And while we were writing this book together, I was in class on a Saturday morning. And Jessie, the dance teacher, her style is she just plays music and dances and we follow along. So we're not learning a set choreography. The songs are always different. It could be Latin, Caribbean, funk, house, pop, blues, 70s, 80s, and this is why I love it. It's super diverse. It's super eclectic. But I've been going there for some time until one morning in the midst of this book, and I think it's connected, we are dancing and I'm looking at my reflection in the mirror, and then I'm broadening out my perspective. And I'm looking at the reflection of everyone as we're dancing to this one song. And I couldn't help but notice the extreme diversity in our movements. Now, on the outside, the class wouldn't appear diverse, right? It was all women, all mostly in their 20s, 30s. Like it wasn't diverse if we're just looking at the most superficial definition of diversity. But what I saw as I gazed in the mirror and as I saw people in their movements is I could see the remnants of a cheerleader in one woman in the way that she moved her arm, like the crispness of the moves. In my own movement, I could see the athleticism. I could see the desire to add an extra jump or just like amp it up a little bit more. I used to call my dance style militant aerobic. I've since softened it. It's a little sexier now, but aerobic militant was my style. So I could see that playing out. I could see someone who was super in touch with her femininity, just like eyes closed, feeling the movements, like not even really paying attention to what the teacher was doing. I could see someone who had experienced a long-term injury in their movements. And so as we were dancing, like I was sitting there and like sparks were just going off as we're having this conversation, as I'm now in that dance studio. And you could just feel like I could feel my heart opening, my whole body opening, and like this ear to ear smile of like, oh my gosh, this too is diversity in our movement, diversity in our energy, diversity in our experiences. And what I also took away from that moment is that what was really unique, right, is we were all in this space where, except for Jessie, the teacher, none of us are experts. We were all learning. I mean, you could tell that too, that none of us are like the best dancers, quote unquote, the best dancers. And what that spoke to me too is, if I think about this point of engaging in community, which I'll come back to, is that we need more and more spaces and opportunities where we're getting together, we're learning new things, we're trial and erroring throughout the experience. And I feel like it's in those spaces where we really it's almost like that is the even playing field for a moment, where we're like, oh, okay, we've never scuba dived before and we try that, or we've never danced before and we try that, or we've never rock climbed before and we try that. Like there's something I was noticing about the physicality and the trying something new, that it's like we are exposed because we don't know how to do something yet. And it's in that space we get to play, we get to be creative, and we get to allow everyone grace because we need it ourselves too, as we're trying something new. And so I'll be going to dance on this Saturday. I'm actually excited to bring our teacher some books and show her that she's made it into this book, The Diversity in Humanity. And I really think that all of the people out there that are focused on healing work and body work and somatic experiences, like just coming back to the body like we do in dance, are absolutely on this same mission of bringing more humanity, bringing more love, and bringing us back to a full appreciation of what we're capable of. So I share that vignette in the chapter as just a alteration too of the perspective around the energy that we're having some of these conversations, knowing that it can feel much more stifling in the corporate environment. And as Karen and Reg, like today we wiggled it out, and it's the same thing in dance. Like we wiggle it out, we shake it out, and you see the beauty and the diversity in our bodies and in our movements. The last vignette I want to share with you is one that is on a topic that I've struggled with for a long time, and you'll read about it in the book. And I talk about the discord of duality, and specifically what it means for me to really accept the fact that I'm gay. And it took a long, long time to really be honest about that with myself. And I know that's true for so many people. But really what was going on internally throughout my 20s, as I started to realize that I was engaging in a lot of patterns and behaviors that were directly the result of me not accepting my sexuality at the time. And what I realized is I was in this internal battle between the good girl, the girl that I had always been, a rule follower, a straight A student, the student class president, the Duke University commencement speaker, like the good girl who never caused problems and always showed up and did the task and overachieved. And not only the good girl, the very faithful girl, the Catholic girl, the one who really loved her faith, who cared deeply for others and didn't want to upset and didn't want to offend and did somewhat unknowingly judge herself for these feelings, these attractions, these desires, these things that were like, no, this cannot be. And so on the one hand, I was grappling with this aspect of myself that I didn't want to let go of my faith. And I also didn't want to, what I felt, shame my family. I didn't want to cause problems. I didn't want to offend. I mean, I was so, okay, I'll just do this thing and maybe no one will know about, you could just feel like I was just like this. On the other hand, I felt like I was between a rock and a hard place because I looked out at the culture. I looked at media, I looked at shows, I looked at friends. I was living in San Francisco at the time too. I was like, all of this was becoming so much clearer to me. And I also felt like, well, I was not really drawn to the secular culture of the LGBT community. I was not drawn to drag brunches and pride parades and really I felt like fetishization of so much, and this idea that it was just about sex and just about the primal and the carnal, and that to join this team, you had to abandon family and abandon God and abandon religion. And you had to kind of hate these people who didn't like you, all of this stuff was happening. And so I was sitting there with all of these feelings, and at the same time, I was just shrinking. And I was not allowing myself the gift of humanity, the gift of full humanity, of sexuality, of creativity, of vitality, because I felt like I was faced with two choices. Be gay and join a political party, or don't be gay and earn your family's approval and acceptance. That's really the dynamic that was going on within. And I'm not really, it wasn't just an internal battle. So for example, living in San Francisco and playing soccer, when I, finally came out at, age 28 or 29, wouldn't even say came out, as you'll hear more, was slowly peaked at, just started dating women and didn't really want to make it mean anything. I was lauded by my soccer teammates. I was praised by colleagues, you're so brave, we're so proud of you, all of that. And then as they got to know me and learned that I was a reader at my Catholic church, learned that my politics were more conservative in many ways. The more they learned those things, the more I could see that I was being celebrated for being gay, but then I was being shunned for these other aspects of who I was, specifically in the gay communities. No, you can't be those things. You can't think those things. and we will shame you for those things. Like this happened in my soccer team, in my office space. And it was the same thing of like, wait, okay, now I'm quote unquote living my truth. Yay. And then at the same time, it was like, well, no, you also have to sacrifice all of these other things. And I know we've all found ourselves in a place of duality, in feeling like it's either this or that. I can either be friends with them or them. I can either be coworkers here or there. Like we're all faced with these dualities. And every single time we're faced with a duality or faced with this binary choice, I believe that's when we are in lack and we are sacrificing our humanity at the altar of duality. And it wasn't until last summer where I just felt, I don't know if it just enough time had passed, or even actually through the work and all my conversations here at Soul Excellence, like I started to get, I don't know if it's bolder or just actually just more comfortable within. And if I think Shantae, it's great to see you here. Of Shantae's conversation earlier, we were talking about belonging, and I shared that actually the only place I've never belonged, like I feel like I belong everywhere. I can be anywhere. I can travel anywhere. I can connect with anyone. And yet I hadn't felt a sense of belonging within because I hadn't allowed some parts of myself to truly belong, to truly be a part of me. And so last summer, I got up the courage to finally share this, because if you're watching this summit, this message probably isn't so surprising to you. You're like, of course, yeah, no, you get to be all of those things. But in the world today and in the culture, like it's just not the way it is. And so last summer, somewhat on a whim, I can be impulsive at times. I was like, I feel ready. And I am a podcaster and I am happy to share my voice, but I'd really avoided this topic. And so last summer I went on YouTube and I shared for just, I think 45 minutes, a YouTube. It's not edited. It's not pretty. It's just me sharing about my 15-year coming out journey. And it was cathartic. It was therapeutic for me to share. But most importantly, what I didn't realize is so many people, of course, felt the same way. So many people felt like they were being boxed into of like, to be a lesbian means I now have to be at the parade, wear rainbow, look a certain way, be a certain way, like just another box. And in sharing that story, that video, and I'm not active on YouTube, like has over 6,000 views. And more importantly, I've received, I think 30 or 40 heartfelt, very vulnerable comments on that YouTube about people who've experienced similar things. And it was a sign to me that when we hold this in, when we choose to almost go through these things alone, we are also sacrificing our humanity. Now, I wouldn't recommend like, just go straight to YouTube. Like there was a whole process I'd gone to really get comfortable and say like, okay, I'm now ready to share this. And I feel like it has brought light. And it also has opened up people's eyes. That's what I noticed in the comments too, of saying, oh, okay, I hear you. And there's no prescription in their video. There's no advice. There's no, this is how things should be. It's just literally my expression of my experience. And we're in this time where we're, on the one hand, we're being told like, live your truth. Like we each get to have our own experiences. And at the same time, we're in a world of social media and shaming where it's like, if you go out of step with the herd, you can be squashed immediately. And so I do think it takes more voices like the ones you've heard in this summit to stand out, to stand up, and to proclaim a new gospel, if you will, a new message that does not seek to pit people against each other and allows people space to break free of this duality and to move from discord to harmony. And yeah, I invite you to go check out the video, or it's on my podcast too. You'll hear the full story of like, well, what was going on in those 15 years, but I really am grateful for the conversation that it sparked. And the point of all of these books, the point of this summit, again, is not to be prescriptive and say, here's what you must now go do. There's so many prescriptions in the world. There's so many like, okay, answer, when in fact, what we need, what we're craving for is spaces to share, spaces to connect, better questions to consider, and more opportunities to like try different things on, to connect with different people, to say, okay, how does this feel? And so this all brings me back and just sharing a little bit of who I am and the things that I've been noticing on my own journey. It brings me back to the three ways that I believe we can all champion humanity. And in doing so, it's really championing ourselves. So first, I invite you to notice duality. If you're in corporate, notice when you're being kind of asked to think of just like either or, and just notice that that's an opportunity for a pause, for a conversation, to apply more creativity. I really feel that anytime that we're being faced with a duality or even a deadline, like all of this rush, all of this urgency, we have to be the ones to say, okay, I feel this pressure. Can I release it and come back here to really feel into what is true and what other options are out there? The second thing, of course, is to engage in community. And what I mean by that is to look for spaces, hopefully like you've really felt and experienced actually in this summit, where people can come together with different viewpoints, with different beliefs, with different religions, with different everything, and engage in conversation, or like we do in dance. How about this? Just have fun. Over the last 3 years, we have lost our sense of community. We have pulled away from each other. We have been divided. Like, the more we can do things in person together and just like have fun and plant a tree, or heck, this weekend, as some of you know, behind the scenes, like just watch the air show that's coming to town and talk to the person on the beach blanket next to you. The more we keep casting a vote for like, no, I'm going to show up again. I'm going to engage again. I'm going to not let past negative experiences influence this moment. And I'm going to be me. And then lastly, and most importantly, is to connect back to heart. I was reading this book from my friend Matthias Fritzen, Bullshit Free Living. He was an author in our book, The X Factor, The Spiritual Secrets Behind Successful Executives. He lives in Germany. He was one of the first parkour people in Germany. He's also a graphic designer and artist. And so he has created this like beautifully illustrated book about, how to live a better life and bullshit free living. And I was reading it today and I love it so much. And it was just this reminder that we are so obviously caught up in our thoughts. We are playing mental games all day long. And the more that we can step back and observe and then drop into our heart space, even just by noticing it, this is the thing that I do to just bring me back here, is to just hold and to feel the pulse. The more we can do that and slow things down and feel into the body, the more space we create for ourselves to be all of us, and for us to attract and connect and engage with people who are willing to go on this journey of creating a new vision for harmony in the workplace and in the world. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being on this journey with us, for reading your copy of the book, The Diversity in Humanity. We'd really appreciate if you leave a 5-star review on Amazon to keep driving traffic to the book. And I want to thank my co-authors. We have really done something special together in this book, in this summit. And I know that we've sparked something big. And so I'm inviting those of you watching to connect with the authors, invite us to speak, invite us to share. You've seen actually what a multi-talented group this is, that can write, that can speak, that can share, that can facilitate. Reach out to us. We want to engage in this conversation with you. And yes, as Reggie says, let's keep it going. This is the start of something. And so from my heart to yours, thank you. Thank you for being here with us. I want to invite you into the world of Soul Excellence and Soul Excellence Publishing. I want to invite you to share maybe the topics or titles that you want to hear in the future, that a book that you would want to write in. Let's build a community around that. Soul Excellence is about the inner way of leadership. It's about doing all the work here so that we can be fully present and agile and receptive and and engaged in the world around us, because we're not constantly in here doubting ourselves and worrying and creating problems in our body. When we clear up here, we can engage fully. And it's an ongoing process. So for now, thank you so much. Thank you, Shante, yes, for cultivating this space, and for you for being a part of it. I'm really honored, the people that we have brought together through these books who are called to titles like this. This is actually, here's one last thing I want to say. What's really interesting as we market all of our books out in the world, here's an observation. The books that we put out do not invoke polarization. They do not invoke war. They do not invoke like, are you with us? Are you against us? Like, our titles are from the heart and therefore neutralize that energy. And I believe that it makes it harder, quote unquote, harder for us to market these out in the world, where people want to be like, yeah, I'm on that team, and no, I'm not on that team. Like, that energy, right? Where you're like, yes, no, the binary, the discord, the duality. And yet the energy that we bring, the networks that we have, this is what propels this message forward. It's not fancy marketing. It's not speaking to the ego. It's neutralizing, and calmly and with curiosity and with courage and the desire to connect, we create the world that we want to see. So thank you so much. This has been such a joy for me to be a part of, to collaborate, to lead, to be the goalkeeper on Team Diversity and Humanity. Thank you all so much for joining us. Don't be a stranger. This is the beginning. Allow it to be a beginning for you as well. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.